Now you're all very welcome to the Racing Room, powered by AK Bets. I'm Ronan Groom, and with me are the usuals, AK, Harry, and Tony, for our latest discussion. As Oasis fever has swept across the Irish Sea and into Dublin, we will ponder where exactly is the Oasis for racing in Britain and Ireland amidst latest developments in the racing tax, which include an unprecedented plan to strike in less than a month's time. Did you like that little segue there, lads? That little link?
Thank you,
Seamless.
Brian. Very good. Yeah, well done. All.
I
Very
don't
smart.
get. I don't
No,
get this.
maybe not.
Yeah, I don't
But
get all
you
that.
boys are heading for your own little oasis on Wednesday. You're over to the oasis that is the Knavesmire. You're heading for York on a little gravy train kind of situation there. You looking forward to it, Tony?
Yeah. I don't go racing much. I was in Brighton a couple of months ago, but yeah, this is the first big meeting I've attended for years because work always gets in the way. But yeah, I'll be getting up about 2 o'clock on Wednesday morning, right in the column, jumping on a train at half 8 and getting up there. Yeah, very looking forward to it. William Darby, who listens to the pod, kindly invited myself, Harry, and AK up there. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Very good. And a quality day's racing, I'm sure, will entail as well. We'll probably towards the end of the pod, we might have news on. We're recording this on Monday morning on how the Judemont links up, so we might mention that. But Tony, do you want to take us away with the racing review for the weekend before we get stuck into a few meaty topics this week?
Yeah, I'll just rattle through that. I'm just got the my other laptop on the BHA site, just tracking the decks for the judgment because there was a little drift on Delacroix yesterday and a hardening of well, but it was to very little money. So we're about 9:45 now, so we should know in the next 10, 15 minutes what's happening there. As for last week, very quiet week. So I'll just quickly rattle through this. More Thunder was probably the star of the show last week. Hugely impressive when we're in the Hungerford. Has made rapid progress since rated 87 at the start of the season, and I imagine Group One prizes now await for that one. There was a very it went under the radar a little bit, but a Japanese horse came over called Aloe Ali was hugely impressive when winning a Group Two at Deauville on Saturday. So not sure where that one's going. Couldn't find out, but you'd imagine they might be looking towards the Arc. He's a mile two kind of horse, but they might try and stretch him out. Disappointing run by Los Angeles in the Royal Whip, only fourth there. I think it was quite weak in the betting, but wasn't watching that live. But the Group One yesterday was won by the recent Sangster acquisition Diego Velasquez. Took the Jacques Lemoir, but notable speech was hugely unlucky there. Had to wait for a run and flew home and wasn't beaten. Well, it's beaten about a nose, so that was a moral winner there. Just a Shergar Cup postscript. We had a question on this from AD, so I'll deal with it now. AD, thanks for your question. He was just pointing out that four jockeys were banned for a total of 32 days at the Shergar Cup. He wanted to know whether all those bans will be reciprocated in their home countries. I imagine everything about the bans being reciprocated seems to be held up by all countries. I think there was one issue a few years back about India perhaps not doing so, but I think all global racing jurisdictions they honour the bans given out in other countries such as ours. So I imagine they will be serving those bans when they get home. And a couple of notable deaths this week, last week even. Tommy Murphy, 88, former Irish champion jockey, flat jockey, and apparently a long time right hand man to Vincent O'Brien. So you probably would have liked his card back in the day. He died, and Bill Turner, uh, racecourse trainer, died at age 78 after an accident at home last week. So I think many people feared the worst once they knew the extent of his injuries. So just shows you racing's a dangerous game at home as well as on the track. So yeah, that was the week that wasn't a great deal, but I think that just about summed it up.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tommy. And we'll wait no longer and get stuck into, I suppose, well, probably potentially the biggest story of the racing year is planned to strike on September 10th. So fixtures at Carlisle, Uttoxeter, Kempton, and Lingfield are set to be scrapped. This was a story broken in the Sunday Times by sports reporter Tom Kershaw. So he was writing, British Racing will take the unprecedented step of going on strike next month, cancelling all meets for a day in protest at the proposed rise to the betting tax. He went on, the first voluntary racing blackout in sport's modern history is expected to cost the industry around £700,000. The chosen day is just before the start of the St. Leger Festival at Doncaster, which Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and his wife Victoria attended last year. So, also just clarifying, the British Horse Racing Authority is campaigning against the Treasury's proposal to raise the 15% tax paid by bookmakers on profits from racing and other sports bets placed in the UK to 21%, which is at the same level as online slot and casino games. So we've had various follow-ups from the Racing Post since. One particular note in the story written by Tony Smirthwaite mentioned that the scrap fixtures could well be rescheduled for another time. And there's also kind of general positivity coming from the trainers regarding the news and from other sections in the industry. Tony, I might bring you in on the Betting and Gaming Council response in a bit, but we'll just get a general reaction to this news. Harry, do you want to come in first? How effective or firstly, how surprised or how groundbreaking is this sort of thing, and how do you think will it have a significant effect at all?
Well, I think within our bubble, it's pretty groundbreaking in that it hasn't happened before in sort of living memory, really. I think that there is the surprising element for me is the fact that it has obviously been quite well coordinated between the various different factions within racing. And the other thing I would say is it shows a level of assertiveness. The BHA's involvement shows a level of assertiveness and proactivity for which is not generally known. It doesn't like rocking the boat. The rumours, for example, over affordability checks, that the BHA didn't want to criticise the Gambling Commission because it didn't think it was appropriate for one regulator to criticise another. This seems a very distant relation to that policy. And I think fair play, I think that it's become very fashionable and sort of knee-jerk to give racing a kicking the moment it tries to do anything. And the comments under the BHA statement were very depressing, full of people saying, oh, the game's already gone, why are you doing this? Why aren't you cutting the fixture list? Which shows they don't understand that the BHA can't do that. And I think that when the BHA does stick its neck out, and when racing does stick its neck out and, you know, does something that is perhaps not that revolutionary in other worlds, but is certainly revolutionary given the conservative with a small c approach that is generally taken in racing, then I think they should be encouraged and also not given a massive kicking if it doesn't have the effect that it wants to, because we want to see more of this kind of thing.
Hey, AK, do you want to come in there? Generally positive
well, I do,
on
anyway.
this,
Sorry.
this move?
Say again, Rob.
Sorry, AK, do you want to come in there? You're generally positive on this this move as well.
Yeah, I like radical steps, to be honest with you, and this is fairly radical. We were only discussing last week on the podcast where I think Harry said that interim CEOs can't do anything too radical, and this seems bloody radical to me. And my initial impression of it was very positively. I took it as a big positive. I quite like it, and I would agree with Harry that if it doesn't work, it shouldn't be seen as a negative. I am concerned for horse racing that it seems to be. You'd have to commend, to be honest with you, the SMF's ability to drive a wedge between horse racing and bookmakers, because that seems to be what is happening here, and I think that's the most prudent way to kill horse racing, to be honest with you. And I think there's some unbelievable naivety going around, and we're probably going to talk about Michael Dugher and his statements of late at some stage in this podcast. But I think he's absolutely spot on in the fact that I just, all my impressions are people in racing just don't understand how reliant they are on bookmakers. And I think what will be quite telling about this strike is what bookmakers do regarding horse racing on the 10th and how they promote other stuff on that day, because it might not be the wake-up call. It might just be a harsh realization to horse racing of just how far down the pecking order it continues to fall. And there's going to be other racing from other jurisdictions on that day. It's going to be interesting to see how bookmakers promote that. It's going to be interesting to see how they promote other sports on that day. And I do agree again with Michael Dugher's comments around that it doesn't appear to be an abandonment of these meetings. They're being, from what I understand, they're being reshuffled around. It's radical. I think it's unbelievably naive, as I've pointed out at various junctions, and we've seen to horse racing to believe that it's not in any way reliant on betting. We'll see who blinks first in that argument. Maybe at some stage in the future, and I wouldn't believe it's the bookmakers. We all know the tax situation. The biggest increase in costs AK Bets have had in the last year is on streaming. It's not been anything government related. It's just going to be interesting, really interesting to see how it all plays out. I think people in horse racing are going to have a shock. I replied to a comment there last night on Twitter from some director of Plumpton Racecourse who ticks all the boxes with his top man suit and his arms folded LinkedIn Dickie pose profile picture. They're just the absolute naivety of these people. They're literally turkeys voting for Christmas from what I can see. But yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I think the people who are of that opinion have backed the wrong course. I respect other people's opinions that are contrary to mine, but I think I'm right on this one, and it'll be interesting to see what happens.
It'll be interesting how it plays out. Tony, do you want to come in on the Bennigan Gaming Council statement that basically alluded that they weren't consulted on this move, and what did you make of that in general? And also, we had a question from Lindsay Gray who said, what does it make, or what did it say about the trade paper that the racing strike news was broken in the Times, I suppose, as opposed to the Racing Post there? Do you want to come in there, Tony?
Yeah, do a few things there. I think the person you're referencing, Thomas Saville, is Peter Saville's son.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's and I think he's quite a big mover in quite a lot of his committees talking about these things. Yeah, we'll deal with the story being given to the Sunday Times. I think we do lose sight of the fact that the Racing Post, it does not get a great audience. It gets all the people in the racing bubble, informed. But
It does. Just an example of that is I bought the Racing Post on Sunday morning for the first time in ages. There's nothing in it, is there? There's no. Every time I buy it, I'm fuming at myself that I've bought it.
Yeah. So obviously it was given to. I actually thought it might have been kind of like someone leaked it, but it sounds like it was given to the Sunday Times. No doubt with the assurance that it was given prominence, and it was given prominence because it was on the front page. So
it was also all over. They had Lee Mostert on BBC 5 Live on a Saturday afternoon before the football talking about it. So I think that has worked, getting it out to a wider audience than would normally be the case.
Yeah, on Sunday or Saturday?
It might have been Sunday, sorry. Yeah, but anyway, it was just before one of the big football matches.
Yeah, so it worked in that respect. But as Anthony said, it was the big story here is, they've just been kind of like sidelined to another day, so it isn't a strike as such. And the other aspect is the gambling industry weren't consulted on this. Now, whether that's because the BHA feared someone would leak it to the Racing Post ahead of the Sunday Times splash, I'm not so sure. But the gambling industry, like you said, weren't consulted, and the first cracks in all this kind of like solidarity from racing it didn't take long for them to surface, because William Darby was interviewed on Luck on Sunday yesterday, and he made a very pointed remark about his kind of like how, you know, Sky Bet's important to, you know, their business model. They've got the, you know, Sky Bet Yorkie Ball meeting coming up this week. So I don't think he was particularly happy about that. And I imagine he wouldn't be particularly happy about all this breaking on the eve of his biggest week of the year. So it kind of overshadows a big meeting. So whether or not, you know, it could have been delayed a week until, you know, we've got the racing over. I'm not so sure, but just on that, Delacroix has been confirmed and Well hasn't as yet. So that
just going back to the BGC statement, I was entertained to see the BGC say they don't think that futile political gestures will only antagonize the government and frustrate punters instead of delivering a solution to a shared challenge facing both racing and betting. It was entertaining to see Mr. Dugher criticize antagonistic approaches to these matters. So
I get the back and forward with people questioning some of the approaches in the past. I just think he's right on this. I think he's absolutely right on this. It's an interesting strategy.
What I'm slightly lost by on this, okay, is which is the bit that you think he's right about? Because he seems to be saying that racing needs to back slots. Is that what you're saying?
No, you're basically cherry picking that one little bit of it.
That is one of the things he's saying. Do you agree with that? Racing should proactively.
It needs to
get behind slots.
I think racing needs to understand that the effect.
That's not an answer to the question. Does racing need to get behind slots?
Does racing needs to understand where its money comes from, and that money's from bookmakers. And any change in the taxation of bookmakers is going to have an effect on racing.
It's one thing that Brent Dunche said on Luck on Sunday yesterday. He made a pointed remark about racing has to go it alone here, and he's saying separate it not only from the casino but also from the sports betting. Now that is a bone of contention that
he is. That is a really, really bad opinion, and maybe it's what we'll remember him by when he's in his next job. But that's the wrong approach.
It could well be that he's doing this to kind of like, you know, he's throwing the dice here to secure his future as the BHA CEO, because like I said, if this doesn't come up, at least there's...
Wait a minute, doesn't Lord Allen start at work in about 10 days? Do we think he hasn't had anything to do with this?
Well, the inference was on Luck on Sunday yesterday that, and from what Brett Dunche said, he was very, very kind of like detached in when he was asked about, you know, has Lord Allen been involved in this process? And he didn't say yes and he didn't say no, but I think he was veering towards the no part of it. But it just seems to be, you know, it's a big gamble here, but I think they have to show some strength in all of this.
It is a big gamble, and it is a mistake for horse racing to try and differentiate itself from sports punting. But the waters are getting muddy here in the last few days, and what the BGC are doing is they are trying to get racing, as I see it, to get behind them to help them keep duty on slots lower. I think that's what the BGC are up to.
But the BGC are obviously going to want duty as low as possible on everything.
Absolutely, it's
like that makes sense.
That's fair enough.
That makes sense. If I was in charge of the BHA, God forbid, that'd be some crack. You've probably got a campaign for something along the lines of racing and sports staying the same and a small increase in duty on casino. That is what I'd be pitching. Racing going it alone. It's just interesting, like this strike, it makes, I put it out there just kind of half stirring the pot, but like what would happen if bookmakers got together and said, we'll have a blackout on UK racing for 2 days?
Why are you bothering with racing now?
I'm not bothering with racing.
No, why do you take bets on racing now?
Because it'd be just interesting to see the difference of who relies on who. Because horse racing is of the belief, it appears, that it can go it alone on this and all these issues, and that it's not heavily reliant on bookmaking. You've seen quotes from Plumpton Man, fucking...
Well, Plumpton, that's the PRA, the son of the chap who runs the PRA. They don't speak for horse racing.
Yeah, but it'd be just interesting to see the flip side of that. Like this whole horse racing can go it alone
Well,
is unbelievably naive.
I don't think horse racing says it can go it alone. I think everyone accepts on both sides that it's a symbiotic relationship. But the fact that it's well, okay, look, of
I'm
course
not even sure
there are
that, Harry, to be honest with you.
there are extremists who don't. But what? So there are people who think you can fund racing, switching race bookmaking off tomorrow and start a tote. You know, get a bit of software and off you go. Okay, yes, those people exist, but I don't think we can take them terribly seriously in the debate. But the fact that the relationship is symbiotic, I just feel racing. I don't understand really how it's become the centre ground of a dispute between the neo-Puritans, as Nick Luck referred to them, and bookmakers trying to avoid duty on slots going up. And racing seems to have got caught in the middle and is being basically kicked by two sets of extremists, really, as far as I can see.
I think what has been lost in all of this, and I made the point privately to some people after like on Sunday yesterday, I just think the absence of punters in all of this, and the discussion around basically whatever happens, I think they're going to end up paying in one form or another. I think that discussion hasn't been had. It hasn't been addressed by the BHA. To my knowledge,
or the SMF.
I haven't seen anything from the Racing Post on this subject. And I think if you're having a rounded discussion on this, you have to have punters and the effect on them, how it's going to move forward from this, because I'm not certain that the government in their current financial predicament are going to be swayed by racing's argument. And
I
don't know how they're going to be. I mean, what we should say is as well. I mean, it sounds like there's going to be a delegation going out to Westminster on September the 10th, and it's going to be, there's going to be some powerful political moves in there. Dido Harding's already come out last night supporting it, and we all know about Gosden's relationship with the Conservative Party and funding Matt Hancock in the past and stuff like that. So it sounds like there's going to be a relatively kind of like highbrow attempt to kind of like get racing in the same room as the government and then make their case. But it just seems like, I mean, the BGC aren't particularly helping here because of their attitude. I mean, they could have taken a more conciliatory approach. I mean, if you go and have a read of that statement, and Michael Dugher's come out on Twitter this morning and put up a big thread about it. There, we'll come on to his comments in the Racing Post last Wednesday in a moment. I just think the cracks are already appearing, and that's what you don't need if you're going to, and we've got another 3 weeks to go before they actually get in front of presumably government officials. I just think
I think one thing that racing could do is explain precisely what its position is here, because as I say, I think the waters are getting muddied between who is supporting what and who wants what. What is it that racing is going to try and achieve at Westminster on that Saturday? Do they have is it going to be A, no increase on taxes at all, B, no increases on sports betting, C, well, okay, sports betting can go up but leave us alone, or are they going to do that in order of priority? Because at the moment, it just seems to me people are, you've got the BGC, I think, are blurring the lines between, well, actually increasingly, in fairness to him, not blurring the lines, just saying racing needs slots. And you've got racing in certain parts. That is more or less what he said in that article.
It's not more
or if it's not in the article and it's in the tweet, he said that he said it includes online gaming. So he and I think that, yeah, it would help if everyone just says, this is our agenda, this is exactly what we're trying to achieve.
All the people that want horse racing to thrive should be feeding into that, in my opinion. And I just think it's unbelievably sad, just to conclude this, I think it's unbelievably sad that 2018, 2017, whatever, 2019 onwards, all of these things, affordability, tax, fucking everything, the whole intention was to reduce problem gambling and keep gambling in the legal market. And what we've seen no impact on problem gambling at all, up or down. We've seen migration of customers onto the black market, and now after this, we're going to see higher margins passed on to customers who will lose a quicker frequency. And if the intention in 2017, 2018 was to reduce problem gambling and have a healthy gambling market, absolutely everything has made it worse.
Affordability checks were a disaster for horse racing, and it was one of the things. I think we're going to move on to Derek Webb, so let's not cover that now. But absolutely, the decision making so far by a number of people, a lot of people involved in this, arguably since 2007, and the ability of bookmakers to become casino operators, it is all decision making has led to where we are now.
Agree.
Indeed, we touched on various points that we were going to talk about a little later in discussion there, including the Michael Dugher article and look on various comments from Brant Dunchy there and look on Sunday. But as you said, Harry, we'll bring in the Derek Webb discussion now. For anyone who didn't catch this on the Look on Sunday show yesterday, so Derek Webb, if you don't know him, former successful poker player, probably even more successful as a litigator, and is kind of a prominent figure within the betting industry, advocating for reforms and funding various organizations. So Nick Luck described him as a poacher turned gamekeeper, which was quite an interesting way of putting it. And they talked for about 45 minutes on the show. It's quite an interesting discussion, and Nick was at his brilliant best, I think, and very challenging towards the end. Tony, you were very much pointing us in this direction to watch this, and I found it very interesting, at the very least, the discussion. What was your main kind of takeaway of what Webb was getting at, or his general points?
I'm probably the least qualified of all of us to comment on that, because I don't really follow him closely. I haven't listened to any of his podcasts he's done elsewhere. But I think it's fair to say it sounds like Nick did a more thorough job than others on this. And like you said, Nick was at his best. His style of interviewing is, and this was a very long interview, as you said, his style is kind of like fluffing them up for the first 10 to 15 minutes and then gradually getting stuck into the nitty gritty, and then, pulling out the knives late on. Like I said, Derek was clearly knows his brief inside out, clearly a very clever guy, clearly a very successful guy, but he was getting really rattled at the end. He started off very confidently, answering all the questions, and then when Nick started pulling out, the heavy guns late on, he was struggling a bit. And then when in the aftermath of the discussion, they brought in Jamie Osborne and Neil Channing, and Neil Channing was, starting to get his point across. And it was quite interesting, the body language of Derek there. He was kind of like going over to Nick for, to be the referee, and, not to stop the fight, but to bring some balance into it, because Neil wasn't, pulling his punches there. So yeah, I thought I learned a lot from it. Like I said, it's not something that I particularly follow. These think tanks and foundations, etc. They pretty much leave me puzzled. But I was just, like I said, and what I gather from after the Luck on Sunday program, I gather kind of like the people involved in the program at Racing TV think they missed the trick by not continuing after the scheduled finish time, because it was starting to get quite tasty. And I'll be very interesting to hear what actually would actually kind of like happened after that. I gather it was all amicable afterwards. I gather they all stayed around for 20-30 minutes, all discussing off camera. So yeah, fair play for Derek for fronting up, but I think Nick Luck probably exposed a few weaknesses in his arguments. And like I said, very good TV. Go on the Racing TV website and listen, and go and watch for yourself.
Yeah, Harry, come in there, because maybe tell us why Derek Webb is, I guess, such a significant slash influential, for want of a better word, in the industry, for what he's trying to do. And what was your main takeaway from the piece?
I mean, I understand he is very influential, but of course you don't know quite how influential someone is behind closed doors. My understanding is that he has funded a lot of the research and I think also lobbying into betting reform. He's very keen on a new Gambling Act, as he mentioned during the podcast, during the interview. I think a lot of us would suggest that the Gambling Act is ripe for redrafting, but perhaps not all for the same reasons. I thought that a lot of stuff he said was instinctively not unreasonable, and that people would feel, I think, for example, we quite often talk about the demise of the high street betting shop and how it's become something closer to a kind of high street casino, fruit machine stall. I think that's fair enough, and I think a lot of people sympathise with that. I found that I struggled to understand his underlying philosophy. He obviously wants taxes to go up, certainly on fixed odds. I didn't particularly understand thereafter what it is that he wants to achieve. I thought the lack of focus on the black market, which he called, just whenever I think Neil brought it up, he said, "Oh, there we go, speculation." Well, it seems to me odd that you're only, if this is the case, that you're very sure about how the regulated market should run. But when it comes to the black market, that seems to be beyond their interest. I didn't really understand that, and perhaps it's just because they didn't get onto the black market. Perhaps he does have theories about how you manage the black market, but those weren't really explored, and that seemed to me a pretty extraordinary lacuna if you're trying to if you're trying to tighten regulation in what has to be the admitted presence of a significant black market. Surely that comes hand in hand with how you then deal with the black market. So I thought that was an odd element of it. Horse racing, he was less warm towards it, I thought, than some of the people who are on his side of the fence, less warm than Matt Zarb-Cousin and less warm than James Noyes, who both sort of present themselves, I think, as friends to horse racing. I think he's more, I don't have a problem with horse racing, I'm neutral on it. It needs to plough its own furrow. There was the rather regrettable phrase that he's very pleased that racing is learning to speak for itself. I thought that was an interesting one, because he seems racing must plough its own furrow, and that furrow, as long as that furrow does not involve supporting bookmakers in their attempts to keep taxes down. So, as I say, I just feel that racing is stuck, between two extremes on this side. And getting a kicking from both. And it's slightly hard for me to see how racing has ended up at the epicenter of this battle, because it's not a particularly for all the MPs that it likes to collect in its ranks, it's not brilliant at lobbying. It's not brilliant at getting its way where policy is concerned. And yet somehow, maybe it'll end up being to racing's advantage. It's ended up at the epicenter of all this. But it was a very interesting interview. Fair play to him for going on what was obviously not going to be a puff piece with Nick, who did a very good job as always, without allowing it to become contentious and losing information in the process, losing sort of communication in the process. I think he put a lot of the right questions to him. It could have gone on for 2 or 3 times the length it did, I think.
Yeah. AK, do you want to come in there as someone, I guess, owner of a founder of a betting website? Some of the stuff Webb was saying here, calling for taxes up to 25%. So he used a example of the Hippodromo Casino in Leicester Square, saying all the overheads they have there with costs and stuff, and they pay 40% tax. So, or they pay 60% tax. Sorry, they pay 40% tax. So why shouldn't online operators be able to spend or pay more as well? What did you generally take out of the interview, or what did you think he was talking any sense?
Yeah, my general opinion would be he couldn't have been much of a poker player, because every time he heard a question he didn't like, he did like some kind of nervous chuckle. So if I was looking to counteract understand the things he doesn't like being asked, I'd be counting my nervous chuckles and the questions in and around those. Yeah, I don't know. My just opinion of think tanks in general, and one of the questions I would have asked, well, the first question I would have asked is the black market. There's now 1.2 million people betting on it in the UK. Are you happy with that? Yeah, you're happy with that being you can't just say speculation. Like we see it all the time in our customer service inbox. People not happy with being asked to provide docs, just saying we're going betting offshore with this company. Literally seeing it from customers. You can't deny it. the fact that you don't want to even attempt to quantify it just suggests that you just can't be taken seriously, I don't think, in what you're trying to achieve in the legal market. Yeah, I don't know. I would have asked him, has he ever of these organizations that he's funded or part funded or placed people in different departments in government, has he what was the last piece of literature they came up with that he disagreed with? Because I don't think he's ever seen a piece of self-funded or partly funded by himself piece of literature that he's disagreed with, to be honest with you. So there's just no impartiality as far as I'm concerned. Like it's if like even just on the political spectrum, like I don't know, I can never do with these people that are just very, very specific about agreeing 100% with one person on absolutely every topic. Like I'll agree with Harry on 80% of the stuff and disagree with him on 20% of the stuff. I'll agree with some Labour policy. I'll agree with some Tory policy. I just think it's just very strange, the people that trot out all the same stuff. It's very, I don't know, it's just very unbiased. And the fact that when you bring in stuff like the black market, they're just not willing to acknowledge it or quantify it, because it basically brings down the whole argument. And it's why they avoid it the whole time. Yeah, I've nothing to say really further than that. It's I think as political campaigners, he's probably very good, because he's probably got a quite flawed argument and it's being advanced.
Yeah, I think coming back to Harry's point, they could have gone on for twice as long. I think it sounds like, the racing TV people think they kind of missed a trick on some areas. Not going into specifics, I don't know, but I'd imagine the black market argument probably should have been expanded, like everyone said, as well as a few other topics. So
sorry to jump back in. I did think there was one interesting moment that could have done with it. Probably would require a program in itself. You might remember he at one point refers to people betting on lottery numbers from other jurisdictions and said, why should they be? I think he said, why should they be allowed to do that? So he's obviously got some views as to the extent of what gambling should be allowed to be on, and beyond slots. And it would be interesting, I think, to understand what those views are. And that doesn't seem to have been hugely explained by him in the past. And I thought that would have been an interesting area to go down. But there are so many interesting areas to go down with someone, with his experience and what he's been doing. So no criticism at all of Nick for not following any particular line of questioning, because there were millions of lines they could go down, and you had to try and cover as much as possible, as broadly as possible. And he did a very good job. And as I say, fair play to him for turning up. I think it's relatively obvious that he's not someone who was trying to do anything other than what he believes in. But I just think that a lot of us struggle to understand the nature of the basis of those beliefs.
Yeah, loads of interesting things to take out of it. One I thought quite interesting as well, the kind of illusion you had that you're probably okay with slots not being in betting shops, but if those machines were at a destinational facility like they have in America, as Nick had pointed out, he was seemed to be relatively okay with that, and you could have pressed him on that and gone further. But as you say, Harry, they would have been there.
Like we live in some kind of. Does he think we live in some kind of dictatorship? What is it about old people that have made a few quid that thinks they can just enforce what they believe on other people? Like some old people seem to have that opinion. Like, who cares what he like? I get he's influential from a political.
Some young people have it as well, haven't they?
Yeah, I was going to say.
What's that?
He said some younger people have the same.
I just don't enforce, man. I just say what I think, but I don't campaign and fund stuff to change. Like, it's just bizarre.
Your critic may say different.
I mean, they're a special type of person, aren't they? People who want to wade into the political realm and change policy. I mean, some people are like that, and some are not. You can certainly see it from the point of view of people whose families have been, if you've lost a child to it, you can perfectly see that kind of motivation. I don't have that motivation. I think most of us don't. If you're someone who's really standing at it from a distance, as he appears to be. But that's not to say he shouldn't do it.
I'm just trying to pick. I don't know how old he is. If I was 75 or whatever how old he is, if I'm in Las Vegas, I'm in a nice gaff. What am I doing? Like, I just don't understand it at all. Like, there's nothing better to be doing. But
I think Nick Luck touched on that, didn't he? It was sort of, do you enjoy this? Because I think he was sort of suggesting why are you bothering with this
thing? You'd love to sit him down on the couch and prod around at that. What's going on in that head? But yeah, I don't know. You can't just ignore the black market, given it's grown since you started getting involved, like exponentially, whether directly, indirectly, whoever you want to attribute that to, and all the different factors involved in that. You can't just say speculation and then we'll cross a line through that. It literally brings down the whole argument, and I think it's just remiss to just ignore that. Essentially,
he was uncomfortable on affordability checks, I thought, because that was a slip up from James Noyes in particular.
Slip up is one way to describe it. Yeah.
An admitted slip up, and of course we shouldn't over hammer people who when they say that they have got something wrong, because of course people are so reluctant to say that they have. But of course it does call into question whether future views and analysis should be listened to in quite the same way as they might have been previously.
We'll move on, gents, because we have a few more things to get through. Duke, if you did catch that piece, hopefully that discussion was interesting, but do try and catch it if you can, because it was an interesting discussion. The lads briefly talked about the Michael Dugher piece earlier in this discussion, with a particularly interesting back and forth from Harry and AK on WhatsApp, and I was pleading for them to save it for the actual podcast. So Michael Dugher, chair of the Betting and Gaming Council, was writing in the Racing Post earlier last week, just at the task at hand for racing with regards to taxation and various other things. But one part of the piece was of particular division among the racing room camp. So I'm just going to read it out now and let the lads come in. So, in pleading for special treatment, this is Michael Dugher writing in the Racing Post, some in racing must stop overclaiming it when it comes to the difference between gaming and horse racing betting. Some argue that horse racing betting is uniquely low risk. This is not true. The rate of problem gambling might be lower than is the case for some other products, but it is higher than for other products too. Additionally, the idea that betting on horse racing is purely a game of skill and not also a game of chance is nonsense. How many punters back a horse because they like the name or the colours? If betting on horses were purely a game of skill, how is it that 150 to 1 shot wins a Group 1 at Goodwood? Of course, knowledge of form counts for something, as does knowledge of breeding, ground conditions, the draw, etc. But luck or chance also plays a massive part in determining the outcome of a race. No amount of advanced knowledge or skill can anticipate when a horse disappoints for whatever reason, when a jockey makes a misjudgment, when a horse has to pull up, or if it simply falls at the final fence. Betting on horses is a gamble. It is not a science. AK got a couple of early jousts in first, so Harry, I'll let you have first innings here.
I don't think AK disagrees with the nonsense about the difference between fixed odds betting and horse racing.
I don't. Yeah.
I think if anything comes from that, it suggests to me that AK should be immediately offering Mr. Dugher some free bets and opening up an AK Bets account. That's the area of it that just makes it lose a strong degree of credibility. I think the approach of telling horse racing you'll know better than slots, which seems to be the underlying message there, was.
Sorry,
I think that is what it's saying. When it comes to,
I think he says some products are higher, some products are lower, to be specific about it. But anyway,
he says that horse racing are overstating the difference between.
I think they are. I think horse racing are of the belief that there are no problem gambling stuff related to it, and I think it is.
I've never heard anyone say that there's no problem gambling in horse racing. This passage was sort of the sort of stuff that if it was passed to your teacher when you were 12, it would have been handed back with the word evidence ? In pleading for special treatment, some in racing must also stop overclaiming when it comes to the difference between gaming and horse racing betting. Some argue that horse racing betting is uniquely low risk. This is not true. The rate of problem gambling might be lower than is the case for some other products, but it is higher than for other products too. I mean, what kind of writing is that? I mean, it's that got past an editor is astonishing.
I take all those points. I think that is technically true.
It's probably right, but generally speaking, you do need to explain what you mean when you say things like that.
100%. That's what I agree with. Right, the bit that kills me is if betting on horses were purely a game of skill, how is it that 151?
I know.
I was reading that like, what the fuck have you put that in for? Like that doesn't make any sense. Betting on horses is a gamble. It's not a science. Listen, we're getting into semantics here. I think it is true. What would I say? I think my opinion is the level of problem gambling, which is unbelievably low across the whole spectrum, is higher on casino products, right? I don't think it's as high. I don't think that differential is as high as some people think, but I acknowledge that it's higher. And my opinion is casino products should be taxed at a higher rate than horse racing and sports betting. Those are my opinions. What that rate is to be determined. But I think the current tax structure we have, that does exist at present. They're taxed at higher rates than sports betting. I know people might want the differential to be higher, but that is what exists at the moment. My overriding thing is I think those comments that I've just made are accurate. They're in my opinion. I still think it's unbelievably naive of horse racing not to be linking itself to sports betting. Horse racing needs to link itself to every betting product on sport, basically. And I understand why. I think he is technically correct in what he's saying, but he's not saying, like, what would give it more credibility, in my opinion, would be saying that some horse racing, it is true that horse racing, some products will be higher, some will be lower than horse racing. Horse racing will be fairly high on the spectrum of sports products that, from a problem gambling, if you actually broke down all sports, like the people with problems that bet on football, for example, will be far lower than horse racing, in my opinion. It's all to do with how quickly the bet settles, greyhound racing, horse racing. If you can bet a 5 furlong race and you know the result in a minute, it's different to betting on who'll win the first half, who'll win this match. It's different in that regard.
No, there are definitely differences within. I mean, sports punting is not a problem-free zone.
You can look at, like, from a casino point of view, I think it would be beneficial to acknowledge that casino is one of those products that has a higher problem gambling rate than horses. I still think it's not as big as some people are of the opinion of, but I think it would give more credibility to acknowledge that, and I acknowledge that. I don't know what else to say. I think it's generally correct.
He doesn't not acknowledge it. He just sort of seems to say that you're no better than really, or you're not as much better than betting, casino betting as you think.
That's true. I think
there may well be an element, but of course, when you're looking at the sort of the cost benefit of a product, you're not just looking at problem gambling. I mean, horse racing would say it has a lot of other things that casino punting doesn't have as well, and which you have to throw into the picture. What I don't like at all is the suggestion that and the almost sneering and bullying tone of some of this content, including on Twitter, including the statement made the other day that if racing doesn't get behind slots, it's finished. Well, in my view, racing needs all the encouragement it can get to distance itself sensibly from slots. I'm not suggesting that you just say overnight, I'm not taking a penny of your money from slot machines, but not very long ago, indeed we still have the trade paper, will write we'll give editorials saying, broadly speaking, we need to protect fixed odds betting, and we had the sport via the BHA opposing the reduction of FOBT stakes. What was that, 5 years ago? So I think huge progress has been made, and actually it is a rare example of long-term thinking, because yes, you will make more money if everyone was able just to run slots tomorrow and forget about everything, and the BHA became a slot factory. We'd all make more money tomorrow. but we'd be gone in a year's time because it just wouldn't be acceptable, So
Yeah.
this
can I
is
make
some
another point
long-term
on that,
thinking.
Harry? Can I
Yes.
make another point on that, which I don't think is acknowledged enough by anyone on either side of this debate, right? Or in the middle or whatever. It's very important to understand the amount of people that bet on sports and bet on slots. These aren't individual categories. You get cross-pollination of both,
Yes.
right? So I think that when you change the economics on one of those products, be it casino, higher tax, lower RTP rates, I think what people just don't understand, in that we see it all the time, Twitter, you get the occasional response to anything that I put up is, well, just turn your casino off overnight then, and then everything will be fine. Like, we're talking about 5% of the population, 5-6%, 1.2 million people that bet in the legal market now bet solely black market, right? I don't know what the percentage number is that bet sports and casino at the same time. With us, I'd say it's fairly high. I'd say it's probably just less than 50% if I had to guess, but I don't know that specific number. 35%, 30% of the player base do both. I think what people need to understand is when you affect one of those things where there's a 30%, 35% cross-pollination, you risk losing that business to the black market, basically. Because if somebody says, fucking hell, your man's reduced by 4% the RTP rate on that game that I really like playing, as well as betting sports, he moves his business to the black market. He doesn't just go, I'll play slots on the black market and I'll still bet fucking golf with AK. He goes, I'll move my business to the black market, basically. And I don't think people are understanding that you pull that casino lever and you acknowledge it's slightly more problem gambling rates. So you acknowledge it doesn't bring as many jobs or whatever. It requires less work from a manual intervention point of view from a member of staff. I don't think people are realizing that once you just raise the tax on that, bookies will reduce the RTP rates on this, they'll offer less bonuses. The black market then becomes unbelievably attractive. As long as you're getting paid, it becomes unbelievably attractive. And then you lose the sport business as well. And that is just not being acknowledged. You can't just move that lever and just go and assume that everyone will still play at that rate and not migrate the whole business to outside of the jurisdiction. And I would love somebody just to can acknowledge that, because I think I'm very genuine about what I'm saying, slightly acknowledging slightly increased problem gambling rates on casino products, acknowledging that the tax needs to be separate to sports betting. But people aren't understanding that you make a big lever change to that casino product, you're putting all that stuff in sports, horse racing, everything
I think
at
that's
more risk than 5 or 6% migrating. You're putting it at unbelievable risk, in my point of view.
I think the broader point you make is absolutely right, which is that a lot of the problem with this debate is it's happening at such a surface level, and there isn't enough digging down. No one. I think what would really help the BGC, for example, is cost this stuff out. Actually, go pay someone, do the exercise of what will happen. That's what happens in other industries. What will happen if this happens? Okay, racing will get a tax break, but how will that play out when you look at it in the bigger picture? And I think people could get on board much more easily with arguments based on actually this will happen, rather than this article is full of puts at risk, this could happen. There's no this will happen. There's no this is what's going to happen. It's just there's a general sense of, oh, this is a bad idea, the sky's going to fall in. And I just think that's not the way to sell your argument.
Okay, all done. Final points made. We need to motor on here, gents, because we're a bit behind. But excellent discussion so far. Our next two topics won't carry as much, I'd imagine, but who knows? So we just want to touch about Richard Forrestal piece in the Racing Post on Thursday. So this is kind of developing the storyline of that kind of the fallout from Thurles closure, developing this more and kind of talking about a macro scale. The effects. So Richard was writing, sudden closure of Thurles has certainly served to crystallise the full extent of the perilous position many independent tracks now find themselves in due to the industry's over-reliance on media rights revenue. So basically, he was just charting the last decade's worth of decisions made by Horse Racing Ireland and tracks when it came to media rights, and basically where we're at now, which is seemingly a very worrying situation for tracks and the overall Irish racing product. Richard was also kind of using stats with the level of fixtures against the declining horses and training in Ireland, which will obviously have a potential negative effect on media rights payments too. AK, do you want to come in on this? You were pointing us to this story, and firstly, to say any Richie Forrestal piece is always worth reading, and this one definitely no exception.
Yeah, he's obviously very good. I've praised him previously with how he goes about writing his stories, and yeah, I'm definitely a Forrestal fan anyway. I think it's worrying because as we've alluded to previously, I think you could go back and listen to this podcast from last year where we talk about tracks being reliant on media rights and not getting people through the door and getting lazy on that. Again, and I know I say this a lot with the various topics, but I think it's probably over indexing where we're at now. I think it's going to get a lot worse in the next 12 to 24 months. I think I think we've just over indexed on media payments and levy and stuff like that. And I think those numbers are going to come down in the next year or two. And if you're struggling now, you're really going to be struggling in a year or two. There's rumours abound. Now, I know we're just out of a 4-day meeting at Tremor, which the man in charge of the track is quite happy with, and they got the weather, and it was almost too good weather because the roads to the beach were fairly blocked when we were down there on Thursday, and I heard the same at the weekend as well. But they got people through the door, and Tremor's a great little track. From comments made publicly a week or two ago, I think Tremor was one of the tracks that's pretty much at break even at the moment. You'd be worried about those tracks in the next couple of years. I'd say Tremor, there's a lot of housing going up around Tremor from what I saw on Thursday, and I'd imagine that land's worth a few quid. I think it's probably the same with tracks like Wexford. Wexford's right next to the town from what I understand, and is probably prime house building land as well, and probably another track it's not going to get any whirlpool races anytime soon, I'd say. And yeah, the other track that's just on my radar is probably Kilbeggan as well. Tremor, Wexford and Kilbeggan, they're the probably three that, if I was looking at it from a numbers point of view, they might be the ones that are close to struggling, I'd say. And I think one of the best bits about racing, I think, is just the idiosyncrasies of the track, and the little communities that are built up around them, especially in Ireland as well. And you'd just be a little bit worried, I think, for some of those tracks, basically.
Very much. So yeah, interesting you mentioned Kilbeggan, and obviously along with Thurles, Limerick, Sligo and Roscommon, they were part of the kind of breakaway racecourse group when it came to the media rights, last agreement to the media rights, and they were very much against or actually had valued being exposed on Sky Sports Racing probably better. But anyway, we're getting into something completely different there. We move on actually as time against us, and I'll just summarize this Phoenix Thoroughbreds story. So the Phoenix Thoroughbreds founder was jailed for conspiracy to this is Ammar Abdulaziz Salman, the founder and chief executive of Phoenix Thoroughbreds, has been jailed for 15 months in the US for conspiracy to commit money laundering. 61-year-old was last seen in public at the inaugural Saudi Cup in 2020 when he was on hand to watch his 2019 Dubai World Cup second Gronkowski. He was sentenced in New York for his role in the infamous one-coin fraud, and he was jailed at Loretto Federal Correctional Institution, a low-security facility in Pennsylvania, on July 11th, with a release date of October 20, 2026. Harry, anything? Just I briefly summarised it there. Can we add anything here? I believe that this whole I've been told by several people to listen to the podcast about this. I believe it's the Crypto Queen podcast. That it's an extremely interesting listen, and I haven't got around to it yet. But anything to add on this kind of this story here?
I don't really. I think 15 months sounds like less than perhaps people were expecting, given how long this has gone on for and the kind of explosion of the story at the time. And it has been going on a long time. So you might have expected there to be a meteor thing to have been going on, reflected in the sentence. I think it is a reminder of some of the money swashing around the bloodstock industry. Sometimes it doesn't come from places that one would ideally like it to come from, and that it does seem to lag behind other industries in terms of source of money, source of wealth checks.
Not according to Nick Goff.
Nick, oh well, no, well that's true. But then of course, it's one of the sort of realities of compliance is it's very easy to catch innocent people, and it's very difficult to catch money launderers apparently.
Well, just before we move, well done to Peter Scargill, because I think he's followed that story for years.
Yes, yeah. I think he might have broken it actually.
Yeah, he's very good journalism.
Yeah, it was brilliant journalism, and I'd just say as well, Ron, and that Missing Crypto Queen podcast is very, very good. He should be next on the list. It's definitely worth listening to for anybody listening here.
After the racing room, of course. Put it on your queue. Right, we'll get stuck into questions, and we're hitting questions bang on the hour mark, so not doing too badly.
Oh, actually, but didn't Anthony have some update on the IHRB BHA situation?
Yeah, just on what we spoke about last week, we were talking about the integrity department and the analysing of betting markets. I spoke off the record to somebody at the IHRB. We mentioned a figure of, we thought it was 350k a year, and the person I spoke to just said, I'll just stop you there. 350k was the figure for 5 years, so it was 70k a year is what they were being charged, which is incredible that the fact they've got rid of that. His understanding basically was there was going to be there's no tender process in place to replace that service. So there is an integrity department at the IHRB, but monitoring of markets is currently not in place from an exchange point of view in regard to that. So make of that what you will. 70 grand a year wasn't worth that, which is over 350 odd days. Is Jesus Christ.
So
cut some fellas outgoing pension payment and pay for that, for God's sake. Like it's
not only is that staggering, but so are you led to believe there's literally nothing in place at the moment for Irish racing, i.e. the monitoring of the markets on the exchange?
Well, they have a department, so I don't know if they're just looking at odds checker or something, but it's I don't know what the level of depth is. Like I say, we've spoke to
they might not be able to afford that 20 quid a month. Too punchy for us, 20 quid.
Google incognito, yeah.
One thing you said, Tony, I was going to say it, and I said, "Oh, they're not saying." We get stuck into questions now. PJ Butler has first question first, which usually the questions offers kind of new topics, but we're harking back here a bit to what we already discussed. But I'll bring in PJ's question. So, can you clarify the law / regulation on cross-selling casino to racing punters? I'm a regular racing punter, but I've never had a single spin on any online slots. Fairly sure you discussed this type of promotion being banned a while back. Can you recall that, AK?
I think
Discussed
there's something coming in there at the end of the year where you can't cross-sell, I think, but it's not in place now, is my understanding. It's very easy not to get casino promotions. You just tell your bookmaker that you don't want to be offered anything on casino. You want to be banned from the casino. You want to be blocked from the casino. It's fairly simple to do.
Speaking from experience, we do get that on new customers all the time. Come in, just ask, and it's no problem. Just do it straight away. What's your angle is asking, why do Racing Post flagship tipsters, Tom Siegel, usually price-wise, Paul Keeley, not show their weekly, monthly or seasonal profit and loss accounts on their selections? When I asked the RP, they said it would be too difficult to do. Tony?
I'm led to, well, they did up to last year. All of their tipsters, they do keep an in-house record. But the problem the Racing Post have, none of their tipsters know. I touched upon this at the Smart Bash. None of their tipsters know the prices they're tipping at once the columns go live, because they have to file at least 2 hours before it goes live at 6 o'clock. Because of that, they have to settle at SP. And I'm led to believe that if they publish them, they wouldn't be representative of the reality. So that is the reason, and I do have some sympathy with that, and also, but against that, I mean, I don't know. They don't keep a staking, don't keep a P&L, but they do a varied staking plan, which is just bizarre for me because, like I said, I don't think that tallies up. But I think there are limitations about what they can do, and they obviously, if you're betting to industry SP, then it's probably not going to look great on any P&L.
Fair enough. Yes, Roy was asking a dream to share. I thought this was an interesting question. Dream to share, not qualified for the Stayers Handicap at Wednesday in York. Just doing a bit of background on this myself. I couldn't find the exact race conditions of the race, but if this is absolutely correct, and no reason to believe it's not, yeah, Roy was asking, should firms void bets if taken? As if you still had them priced up as favourite, AK. So if we or any firm had priced up or dreamed to share and he not actually qualified to take his chance in the race on a black and white kind of thing, should the bookmaker be giving you back your money there?
So far away from these topics, and it sounds to me like they should be void, to be honest. They should be void, shouldn't they, from memory? But I don't deal with this on a day to day.
I did some asking around. It sounds like the handicapper may have refused to give him a mark because he's a dual grade 1 winner over a bumper winner, and I don't think the handicapper had enough flat form for him to be assessed. I think it was 2 runs down.
That's not. That's a real awkward one, isn't it? Does that fall under?
But someone from I did ask on X, and somebody via somebody else from 365 got in touch saying that they void in these circumstances, and I got in touch with a few other bookmakers as well and said they would void, but it's not a black and white one.
It's a bit of an anomaly, isn't it? But if you've had a bet with us, we'll void it. I'd say it seems fair.
I think one very big bookmaking outfit got back in touch and said if we had taken a bet on the horse, we would be void.
That's it.
It's just illustrative of how dead anti-post markets are. But yeah, I think you should be able to get your money back if you complain, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because a well-touted horse for flat handicaps this summer. So we'll see where he goes next. David Brown is asking about the interview that Richard Hannon did with Matt Chapman. So this raised a few eyebrows during the week. So after Rosalien this week, do trainers owe any duty to punters or just to the owners? Given how much betting underpins racing, isn't transparency essential now in this day and age? Could the BHA implement a rule where this is a formal obligation to make aware of any setbacks to horses, Tony? So this is Richard Hannon telling Matt Chapman that all is well with Rosalien going for the Prix-Jacques de Marois, and then later on, quite soon after, declaring that he's not going to run there and ended up running or go for York. I think the City York Stakes.
Yeah, I think the reason Richard Hannon gave is the horse has a history of problems and he hadn't got in touch with the owner about this specific flare-up. And I think he made the point that that particular owner wants to hear first and not on Sky Sports Racing, which is probably fair enough. Yeah. It links into the piece that we did on William Haggis and Merchant at Royal Ascot. The trainers aren't going to give you chapter and verse about horses, even high-profile horses. They're just not, because they just said all these setbacks and hiccups and problems.
Yeah,
they'll be made.
I think a rule that tries to enforce it would just be impose that obligation would just be a complete nightmare to enforce, and would end up with a huge. I mean, the insider trading rules for the FCA, for example, are extremely complicated because there's an extremely complicated issue. You know, the idea of information which is market sensitive and how you treat it is very complicated, and I just don't know how you would police that.
The BHA wouldn't have the staff to do it. I mean, if you're going to get thousands of horses updates on problems they've had, it logistically will be impossible.
We probably need to establish whether the BHA thinks betting underpins racing, first of all.
Just ignore it,
Ronan. David Dunn, what are the panel's preference, jumps or flat? So we can all take, or you guys can take this. Your jumps or flat, AK, and maybe one sentence why you prefer.
One sentence is tough for me, Ron. I much prefer the jumps because I recognise the names of the horses a lot more and the longevity of the careers. And then also when I'm on course, it means that I can go for a piss.
Lovely. Harry, jumps are flat.
Flat for me. I take AK's point about recognizing the horses, but I know an awful lot more people in flat racing doing an awful lot more work in it, so I just follow it more closely.
Tony.
As we're off to York on Wednesday, I'll say flat, but we should mention that Harry's Alphonse Legrand is running at York on Wednesday, so
yeah,
he'll be carried into the.
And like all good horses, he's taking his lawyer with him in advance.
Yeah, he's Harry's going to be carried in on. I was going to say a stretcher, actually. No,
depends how it goes.
That'll be a stretcher on the way to the station about 7 o'clock. But yeah, he'll be carried in by the owners in advance of another victory. He's actually favourite for the race, actually.
Is he?
Yeah.
Is he? He says with a.
No, I haven't looked at the card at all. Honestly,
did you make him favourite, Harry?
I haven't looked at the cards. It's quite difficult.
Yeah, Harry told me he makes him a 5-1 shot, which is what he. So yeah, good judge.
True, bang on the money. Ivor Weatherly is asking if AK hates low grade racing so much, why doesn't he just switch it off?
It's I don't hate low grade racing.
Just hates racing. Full stop.
I just think for racing survival that it means it's where I'd start pruning basically. And if you want me to answer the question exactly, it'd be the same kind of answer as I gave to the casino lever point earlier on in the podcast, that not offering something that your rivals do offer, it wouldn't be the most prudent.
Out of interest, you can't do it anyway, can you? Don't you have to buy it as a package?
Yeah, well, you can. I don't even know how it works. You can probably turn pricing off on it and just
I see.
Up to the off. But I'm not sure you can even. I'm not even sure you can just remove the card.
I'd be quite surprised if you could.
It's probably built into the relationship. I'd say that you have to offer.
Didn't someone try to do it and then Art got heavy with them? Was it one of the South Coast tracks, wasn't it?
You tried to do it at Bath or somewhere like that, was it?
Yeah.
Flutter and Paddy Power tried to, and then I think Crudder sent them a letter and they shat themselves and put it back up.
Sounds about right.
Shane is asking, wasn't there supposed to be 50 races run in Ireland over jumps without the big 3 or 4 trainers? What happened to that initiative? I can help you out here, Shane. So it was 60 races was the plan, and it was meant to be without the 4 trainers, them being Willie Mullins, Gavin Cromwell, Gordon Elliott, and Henry the Bromhead. And basically, there was a statement released to the HRI or Horse Racing Ireland last November. And it was basically a kind of a pushback from the trainers I just mentioned there. The statement basically read, HRA has listened to concerns regarding the series and will engage in consultative process with industry stakeholder bodies in Q1 next year. So they basically reined back from the initial plan following a bit of heat, I guess, from Willie Mullins and co. So it's been the plan there, and I haven't seen anything from that since. And final question from Neil Monroe: which bookmaker of the majors is the most dependent on racing? Is it Betfred, hence their sponsorship? Would bookmakers ever unite to cut all race course, jockey, trainer sponsorship to make racing realize how much more than the levy they receive?
Dependent, I think. I don't think any bookmaker is dependent on racing, to be honest with you. It's an accompaniment to what they already have. I think horse racing is quite lucky that a lot of independents don't have shareholders to justify spend to, because if Betfred and even in Ireland, John Boyle, for example, would be quite heavily invested in some events that on paper probably make no sense. Thinking like the Irish Greyhound Derby and even Ben Keith in England with the English Greyhound Derby, I'd imagine they lose money every year on that stuff. Independent bookmakers can do more things with the heart rather than the head, I'd say. That package off the top of my head, was that 2 million a year to sponsor the classics or something like that? I'd have 2 million in my head for Betfred. I'd be shocked if they get value out of that. Maybe they get something on course in return or something, but I'm not sure it pays for itself. So I don't think they're dependent on, it's just an accompaniment to. And would bookies ever unite to cut all race course jockey trainer sponsorship? I don't think they'll ever unite because it's cartel behaviour is probably frowned upon. But I think they might reach the same conclusions independently, just from an economic point of view. And I think jockey, trainer, race sponsorship, low level stuff, I think might be one of the first things to go. Yeah.
Very good. That will do it for this episode of The Racing Room. Thank you very much for listening. All that's left to say is the usual. If you're having a bet this week, do check out the AK Bets Big Prices tab, and of course all the top racing at York. We will very much be attacking all of the big races there. Just looking at the Jude month in front of me here now, and the likes of Ombudsman, Delacroix, and the French horse there, whose name I can't pronounce properly, will be top price on all those horses and all the big name horses this week. So do check out our prices on that. And we'll just leave it there, gents. Thank you very much for your views. Very much enjoyed the discussion, and thank you for listening or watching at home. And we'll be back at the next week. Cheers.